Hey world, what up? Around the clock in the NBA, there's been a couple of moves, a couple of rumors go down, and surprising stories, and we're gonna kind of cover those with Colin Coward here today. But kind of first things first, shout out to the New York Knicks, man. Four seed in the Eastern Conference, sitting at an 18-17 record, 3.5 games behind the Milwaukee Bucks for a third seed. So the New York Knicks right now, they're not a laughing stock anymore. Tom Thibodeau surprisingly has held them down to a respectable franchise with a leadership direction. And that trade for Derrick Rose is paying dividends because D Rose is starting for the franchise and the team, and they're looking good as of right now. So I was wrong about the New York Knicks coming into the season. I thought they were going to be a laughing stock, and I actually had them bottom of the Eastern Conference. So they're looking like in a great position to where if they can keep this up, they could potentially get into that playoff picture when it comes the end of the season. And as of right now, the Charlotte Hornets are a 10th seed, and they are 2.5 games. Actually, they're actually 1.5 games away from the New York Knicks with the 4th seed. So the Eastern Conference bottom echelon could be pretty much like musical chairs, bouncing from back to back. But shout out to the New York Knicks as of right now. The Boston Celtics have been having a losing record, but they finally picked it up back to a 500, sitting at a 6th seed. But they've been a mess and a disappointment altogether. The Miami Heat and the Toronto Raptors are back in the playoff standings as of right now. So they finally come back to earth, kind of back to the standings to where we kind of mentioned them to see. And they're on a good momentum as the season's kind of going along towards halfway to the second half of the season. And the Washington Wizards have actually won around, I believe, 5 out of their 7 last games. So kudos to them. What else? And lastly, in the Eastern Conference, the 76ers are still at the number 1 seed. Joel Embiid is still at the top of the MVP campaign, pretty much sitting at 30 points a game, dominating with 40-point outings within this week. Kudos to him. And in the Western Conference, the LA Lakers have won back-to-back games against the Trailblazers and the Golden State Warriors. Now, credit, like I said before, they needed Dennis Schroeder if Anthony Davis was out. They finally got back Schroeder those 2 games, and they've been undefeated, winning back-to-back. Pretty much with Schroeder, those 13 to 19 extra points a night with LeBron James is a huge help, and we've seen that within so. Nothing too crazy left in the Western Conference for me to dive in, but we'll jump here with Colin Coward. He's going to go more in depth about this NBA's week, and we'll hit up these hot takes.
I was a little critical of him. All right, Chris, it's honesty time. Are you surprised how good he is?
I'll tell you where I was, Colin. I was comparing him. Well, let me say it this way. I didn't go full on guaranteed to become the GOAT like you did. All right. I didn't go that far. All right. But I compared him to Charles Barkley. I think he's the new age version of Charles Barkley. A little bit Larry Johnson, but I love the Barkley comparison.
Yeah.
I felt it then when he was drafted, and I feel it now. I think his skills, his jump shot will improve to the point, Barkley didn't come into the league shooting that way.
Yeah.
And I think he'll be able to shoot it better in the years to come. Obviously, he's got the power and the explosiveness of Barkley. What he doesn't do well, that Barkley always did well, is rebound.
Yeah.
I don't understand why Zion can't rebound. For him to average 6 boards a game is a disappointment. But he looks great. I like the fact that he's on the All-Star team. I wouldn't have thrown a hissy fit had he not made it. But I like that he's there. He'll be there the next 10 years or so if he stays healthy.
Real quick, Zion Williamson is an all-star reserve this season as expected to be. He is giving you around 25 to 26 points an outing, as well as 6 to 7 rebounds. And he's played majority of the games for the New Orleans Pelicans. So as of right now, Zion's been an all-star as we expected. He is a power forward. On my position, he needs to lose around 10 pounds of fat. He needs to be able to, if he loses 10 pounds more fat, he can actually transition into a 3 if he wants to become more of a slasher and pick up a ball handling experience to where he can be more of a maneuver on the offensive side. I'm not sure if that's I'm not sure that's more of a comfortable state for Zion Williamson as of right now. He is more glorified at a power forward position, a 4 for any team and franchise. And with the Pelicans right now, they are one of the bottom teams into the Western Conference. They are sitting at around a 14-19 record, 11th in the West. So Stan Van Gundy, as the coach that's been implemented into their new team, and Steve Adams as well, they have to get something going, as well as Brandon Ingram is not an all-star this season. Zion Williamson now is. It's been more of a flip-flop. You're going to need that expertise and glorifiedness of Zion Williamson to get him at least 500 this season. But that comparison to Charles Barkley, I can somewhat see it. Charles Barkley was a 4. He was around 6'4 to 6'5. And Charles Barkley would use his athleticism to his prime, if anything. When Zion Williamson came into the league, we would see some comparisons and some laughable comments and remarks to, they would say he was pretty much a Julius Randle 2.0. Now, of course, this was when Julius Randle was getting bounced from team to team in the league. Zion Williamson does have somewhat of that resemblance, but his game is more due to his athleticism, his size, and bully ball.
What I like too, Colin, is that Stan Van Gundy is putting the ball in his hands.
Yes.
Now, I don't want him to become LeBron James. I don't want him to have the ball in his hands all the time.
Zion Williamson cannot be a LeBron James. LeBron James is a floor general. He is a point forward. Zion does not have that handle, let alone he does not have the lower body to be a guard as of right now, if anything.
He's not that level of player, but for that to happen sometimes, for him to, move without the basketball, be around the paint and cutting and slashing and getting easy buckets, all of that is great. And they've actually taken off since the ball's been in his hands a little more. They've won 7 of their last 12, which is very good for them. So I like what I'm seeing from Zion, but he's got to improve in a lot of other ways. The outside shot, the rebounding, and obviously the defense, but he's a young kid. I'm not going to hold that against him.
By the way, there's a piece of video here we show. It's very quick when he drives the lane against, I think it's the Philadelphia 76ers, and he puts a shoulder into a member of the Sixers, and a 6'6" defender literally flies to the floor. He initiates so much power and so much contact.
He's playing well.
Yeah.
Hey, man, Zion Williamson, if he works on his jumper, he should be straight. He's only giving around 31% from 3. And from the free throw line, 70%. Those numbers need to increase. But at the end of the day, he is, 20 years of age, anything in that mix. He'll be fine as he's increasing his game. He needs to work more on his jumper, let alone with Zion. He needs to work on losing 10 pounds of fat. Of course, continue to build muscle, work on his ball handling, and become more of not a traditional small forward to where he can bring up the ball from time to time, but he needs to work a little bit more on the ball in his hands, being a slasher, which he's been doing progressing this season. So he's in good hands. I'm not worried about him too much.
I'm not going to hold the winning. People are holding, they're not winning. How well can he be playing? LeBron James didn't make the playoffs his first 2 years.
That's right.
Kevin Durant didn't make the playoffs his first 2 years, and they obviously were balling. So
Listen, Zion Williamson is going to be one in generational talent. But listen, he is not on the level as a Kevin Durant or LeBron James on, number 1, impact. Number 2, as that high level of a generational talent. Zion Williamson plays more off the ball. He's more of a team system as he was playing in Duke. When you're playing with one of the best coaches of all time, playing off the ball in a team system, that's Zion Williamson's game. LeBron and KD need the ball in their hands. They can make it happen. They can dictate a game pretty much 90% of the time on offense. Zion Williamson, more of an off-ball player. He needs to work more on, again, 2 different things. Losing 10 pounds of fat so he can pretty much transition into that small forward setting. If that is the case, he wants to go, let alone working on his ball handling. So where he can initiate the offense from time to time. That hasn't been the case in his game. It's kind of progressing a little bit, but not too much. Basically what I'm saying is KD and LeBron have the ball in their hands. They can initiate offense. They can go ISO. They make it happen.
You get a grace period as a young guy.
Sure.
You really do. Unless you come in and play with a superstar like Kobe with Shaq, Magic with Kareem. Otherwise, you get a grace period to win.
All right, so there's a lot of arguments today about the Celtics and Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens, and I've been saying this. Joy and I talked about this. We have a condensed schedule, and it's really not benefiting a team like Boston. Boston has to play a certain way. Boston needs extra. They're very tactical. They need the extra day of practice and film study. And they've dealt with some injuries. So this kind of talented Boston team, that basically this condensed schedule is taking out a lot of coaching. That it's just like, go out, guys, and play. You play, you fly overnight, you land, you get a shoot around, and you play. And I don't think they got to the finals last year, Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think it's Brad Stevens. I think this condensed schedule is benefiting some teams, and I think it really hurts the Celtics and Brad Stevens. That's my take.
Well, the Boston Celtics are in a particular situation. Before the season, I told you cats that I expected the Lakers to come out of the Western Conference. That's still looking good on my side. And what will happen in the Eastern Conference, before the James Harden trade, I had either the Boston Celtics and or the Brooklyn Nets. Now, my Celtics were the Celtics were my favorites within that time period. And they've been a disappointment as of so far. Now with James Harden being traded to the Brooklyn Nets, they're going to come out of the Eastern Conference. There's no doubt about that. We're going to see a Lakers and Nets finals. But back to the Boston Celtics. Danny Ainge has not appropriated the right pieces to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Now, we do have seen that Marcus Smart has been out for the past couple of games, and he'll be out probably until April or so. He is an Energizer Bunny. He is a culture setter. He is a dog out there, a respected veteran within their franchise. With him off the court, this team doesn't have that go-to getter. They don't have that somewhat of a culture, and they don't have the respect within their teammates. You do have a bunch of young cats out there off the bench, a lot of no-names that are pretty much respectable in the team offense, but when push comes to shove, they had lacked depth in the playoffs year after year pretty much. And this is the same thing we're going to see within this season. They were sitting at a 15-7 record within this video. Now they push it up to a 17-17 record. The good thing with the Boston Celtics, we see a resurgence of potential with Jaylen Brown, who got an all-star reserve. Jason Tatum has been kind of on and off this season, but Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have been neck to neck within that dynamic duo. They don't have the bench that's appropriated. They never addressed a true big on their team. Tristan Thompson is a nice veteran role player. But when it comes to a starting center, Daniel Tice cannot be that championship starting center. And I regurgitated this back and back again. They should have stuck with them more. They should have made a forced trade to get a Steven Adams. They didn't do so. They're stuck with Daniel Tice. I'm not crazy about that. Back when it comes to their point guard setting, I was not crazy about the Kemba Walker the signing. Now, I'm fine with it for the first season, but if you sign him for 4 years, as he's 30 years of age, approaching 31, you're going to see, and I've said, his second, third, and fourth year, that contract is not going to be justified, especially on the timeline of things with the young Jason Tatum, a young Jaylen Brown. And Kemba Walker was pretty much a forced option for their GM to go and get him because Boston's never really gotten a big name via free agency. So what I'm saying pretty much is the roster is still respectable. They don't have a bench. And besides within that, they got to let go of Kemba Walker. You're going to have to retool in a different direction. They should have stuck with Terry Rozier as their starting point guard, but you did have that Kyrie Irving inflation situation to where guys weren't getting enough touches. So the Celtics right now need to retool. They can still get back into the Eastern Conference Finals. They can do so, but with the Brooklyn Nets now situated with the Big Three, Boston would pretty much have to go through a Philadelphia 76ers team in the playoffs. I'm not sure if they can win that series. It'll be a close one. If they're going to go against the Milwaukee Bucks, that can go either way.
Somewhat. I mean, look, obviously coaching has made a difference in Philly. You know, Doc Rivers is doing a great job there. I heard what you said earlier about Quinn Snyder and these guys being in the system, but Quinn Snyder's doing a great job of coaching. I mean, that team, he's the coach of the year for me right now by a mile. So I think coaching is still having an impact. And Brad Stevens, anybody that says he's not a good coach just isn't watching the game. So he is definitely a good coach. There's no doubt about it. And he's earned the right to be able to work through this tough period. And it's tough. They've gone 7-14, Colin, over their last 21 games. I mean, but here's the question about Brad Stevens. Can he handle Ferraris?
Yeah.
He's the guy that makes the most out of a Honda Accord. You know, like at Butler, at Butler.
That was embarrassing for the 2019 Boston Celtics when you had a starting lineup of Kyrie Irving, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Marcus Morris, and Al Horford as your starting five with Marcus Smart off the bench with Terry Rozier. And Gordon Hayward, which he would start kind of from time to time as well. But that team right there in 2019 should have made the NBA Finals as they were predicted within the preseason by a long shot. But we did see the resurgence of the Philadelphia 76ers bringing in Jimmy Butler within that trade with Minnesota. We saw Milwaukee pretty much come out of nowhere, taking the number one seed with MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo. And the next team, the Toronto Raptors, with Kawhi Leonard and Kyle Lowry in the crew. So Boston, when it comes to Brad Stevens, he has not handled the makeup of that team with different personalities. He did not handle it well. He did not get the respect from Kyrie Irving and the crew. Now you're sitting at a team that you're pretty much stuck with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as your core foundation, which is good with them. But besides from that, you're going to have to take the Boston Celtics to the next leap. I thought that was the case for last season when they went against the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. They couldn't get it done with, and they lost to a couple of close games.
You're not getting blue chippers.
Yeah.
You're not getting the guys with the egos and all the hangers on that are going to the pros. And Boston, you know, they had a lot of guys that fit that Brad Stevens mold early.
Yeah.
Kyrie gets there, and he can't handle him. All right, now Tatum and Jaylen Brown are growing into superstars. Now, they came up under Stevens, so I would think it'd be a little different. But right now, he's struggling with those. I'm not saying there's a beef between those guys, but having two All-Stars, Colin, they got two All-Stars, and they're below 500, and that's a problem. So that's the thing to watch. There are coaches in the NBA that can maximize so-so talent. Kenny Atkinson when he was in Brooklyn, right? I mean, you got these role players, and they're playing hard, and they're gutting it out, and they're beating teams they shouldn't beat, and they're 42-40, and you go to that, wow, that guy can coach. But then you give him some real talent that could win a championship or come close, and he struggles with it because he overcoaches.
Right.
And so that's the thing to watch with Brad. Again, he's earned the right to work through this, but going forward, that's something to keep an eye on.
Listen, I'm more worried about Danny Ainge putting a championship team rather than Brad Stevens as of right now. I mean, in 2019, you got to put that more on Brad and Kyrie Irving as the main two. But as of right now, the Boston Celtics do not have known names as a bench. They need more vets. Jeff Teague and Tristan Thompson were nice pieces within that. But within your own free agency, if you're Boston, man, you could have had a sign-and trade with Gordon Hayward. You could have brought in Doug McDermott and or with Miles Turner. That did not go down with. And we saw with Gordon Hayward, he went over to Charlotte. Danny Ainge has not appropriated a championship team to help out Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Brad Stevens. He has not done so, and he needs to do something. He even made remarks that this is not a championship team, this is on him. And for sure it's on you. He hasn't done anything as of right now, and I doubt anything will go down within the trade market. The Boston Celtics right now are looking like either a first-round exit or a second-round exit.
If you had a coworker and the coworker missed one day of work a week, you work with Rob Parker on your radio show, and once a week Parker called up and said, I got a bad back or laryngitis, you would think to yourself, I like him, but he's not terribly dependable. Anthony Davis has missed 20% of his games in the NBA. Okay? Once again, he's nowhere to be found. And I do wonder, he signed a 5-year contract for a reason. Could I make this argument, Chris? Last year, the pandemic benefited one team, the Lakers. Their old star got a 4-month break, and their brittle star got a 4-month break. And then they're not going to get that. There's no proof that Anthony Davis...
Well, two things, and I'll let him finish. Number one, all these teams got a break from 5 months of rest. The LA Lakers actually looked a lot rustier, especially with LeBron James. LeBron James looked horrendous coming into the NBA bubble. I mean, it looked like he aged around 2.5 years. And LeBron, of course, he can adapt, especially later into the playoffs, but LeBron James did not look like himself when he came into the bubble. Those first 8 games to end off the season were pretty much horrendous for LeBron James offensively, let alone with his fatigue factor. Now, the LA Lakers, they were, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they were the oldest team in the NBA with a bunch of veterans out there. So, of course, yes, I mean, the rest was good for them. But with any other team, you got rest, you had the same opportunity. So I'm not throwing that out there. Nah.
Can give you 82 games in a playoff run healthy. And last year, as awful as the pandemic is, it was a little bit of a hiatus break for the Lakers for older LeBron and brittle AD. And I look at him and I think, this is exactly what he is. Watching the game in a nice sweater. This is what I've seen most of his career.
What?
I mean, come on now. The LA Lakers, who just won a championship with Anthony Davis on the most impactful part of the offensive defensive side, especially from early on to the start of the first two games of the finals. Then LeBron took over at the rest, but Anthony Davis was on the high level of the hierarchy of the NBA. Of course, you got to give him the 5 years. He just won a championship. Even we know there's an injury prone timeline when it comes to AD in his career. You still got to give him the max, even if he's out for a couple of games. You have LeBron James for a few more seasons. I believe around 2 to 3 more seasons with LeBron James. When it comes down to it, you want to keep him paired with Anthony Davis. And push comes to shove. He may be hurt a couple games. It is what it is.
First of all, on the Rob Parker thing, I mean, working with Rob Parker every day, that actually sounds pretty favorable if he took a day off per week. I wouldn't frown at that, no. But no, look, Colin, you make a point about Anthony Davis that's undeniable. Last year was the aberration. And I don't know if he was trying to impress LeBron or what, but it was good. LeBron sets a tone. He sets a standard. And Anthony Davis felt compelled to live up to it. He was playing through little nicks and knacks and bruises and bumps that we've never seen him play through. And it was great. But this year he's kind of back now. And Achilles is nothing to mess around with. But he does seem like he's falling back into his old habits. So what I'm saying, Colin, is that Anthony Davis, not during this 5 weeks, whatever it is that he'll be off, he not only needs to get himself right physically, but he needs to do some soul searching mentally.
Yes.
Because this was the year he was coming off that championship. He was supposed to be in the MVP conversation.
No, sir. No, sir. I don't care what anyone was saying. Anthony Davis has never been in that conversation, nor will he with the LeBron James team. Even though LeBron James would gladly, quote unquote, give Anthony Davis that opportunity, which LeBron James is very strategic, he would say so, but LeBron James will take that MVP. For example, the NBA Finals. The first two games, Anthony Davis had a dominant performances of pretty much leading the MVP case with the 65% chance on him and then 35 on LeBron. Now, the next couple of games, LeBron James did not feed Anthony Davis as much, and LeBron James pretty much was stat padding and went out there to inflate his stats to pretty much win that MVP. And we saw with AD pretty much the last two games. He pretty much did not get the ball as much, and he saw the demeanor to where, okay, LeBron James wants to win this MVP. I'll go with the flow. Again, guys, Anthony Davis is a beta. Let me repeat myself. Anthony Davis is a beta. He's understandable as a number 2 option to win a championship. And after playing with one of his main idol players with LeBron James, after seeing him whenever he was younger, Anthony Davis understands what this is all about. So when it comes to the next regular season, LeBron James states Anthony Davis can win an MVP. I will give him the torch, yada, yada. LeBron James is just fueling a diluted Anthony Davis. LeBron James understands he's the impact player. This is his team, his city, and LeBron James wants to win the regular season MVP, as we can tell by LeBron's actions.
Yeah.
You know, at the beginning of the year, I think ESPN had him the second best player in the league, which was ridiculous. But
very ridiculous on ESPN, but you understand they want to get NBA fans talking. They want to create drama, speculation. ESPN for sure knows that Anthony Davis is not the second greatest player. They just won a championship. They want to create a little narrative. AD, as of right now, is a top 7, top 8 player in the NBA, and he always has been for the last 2 seasons.
Still, that's what people were expecting. And I thought there'd be a natural passing of the torch from LeBron to AD. It's your team now. Take us to the promised land.
Well, you're being blinded, Chris Broussard, on that part. And I've stated LeBron James is chasing the GOAT. He's chasing Michael Jordan's the GOAT. LeBron James is 36 years of age. He's playing more of a point guard and small forward responsibility with a high ball usage. LeBron James is the greatest player in the NBA as of right now. And trust me, he still is. That torch is not getting passed LeBron James will capture 6 NBA championships, and he's for sure going to try to capture 6 Finals MVPs. LeBron James is not going to pass the torch as of right now. The Lakers are still a top favorite to win the NBA championship, alongside with number 2, the Brooklyn Nets. LeBron James is not going to mess this up, at least for now. But overall, I'm going to kick it off on here. We pretty much have seen more with the Philadelphia 76ers success, the Boston Celtics downfall, with the LA Lakers with Anthony Davis injured. I fully expect the Lakers to pretty much still be a top 2, top 3 seed in the Western Conference. Still expect LeBron James to be top in the MVP race at the end of the season, as LeBron James is going to use that longevity and narrative case. And keep an eye out for the Boston Celtics if they try to make any trades for Kemba Walker or any of those quick moves. But we'll end it off there.